plan for your business.
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance profession.
Lawyer, a Chartered Secretary, Corporate Governance Guru, Mr. UWECHIA, ACIS. Mr. UWECHIA, it's a pleasure to have you on Corporate Governance again.
Same here, my dear distinguished presenter.
Thank you very much for finding time to join us on the program.
Most grateful.
Like I said, we are going to be discussing the relevance of succession planning in corporate governance.
Yes,
and I'd like us to start this conversation by asking, what really is succession planning in organization all about?
Thank you very much, Tunde. You could see succession planning. So it's talking about who comes after who in a planned, methodical, and organized manner. It's not a winner's take all. It's not a jamboree. Organizations, bearing in mind that the most important resource organization is the human resource. Man is subject to vagaries of life. I look at distinguished, respectable doctors. Nest in such a way that the organization is not fully disrupted, while recognizing that a key resource has either resigned, retired, or is an emergency, or is not capable of providing that leadership. Somebody quickly steps into it to continue. So if you picture a tanker, this huge ship. So you have the captain, he controls the ship, but there must be somebody behind you so that if the captain slumps on the steering or something happens to him, the ship will not just go on a journey of its own. Somebody will then be able to direct it, ensure that it continues until it reaches its destination. So in a nutshell, that's what succession planning is all about. It is how the talent pipeline is managed, sustained, nourished, ensuring that when somebody steps aside or steps up or steps down, there is somebody within or without, outside the organization, who immediately step in so that business will continue as usual.
Without creating a gap.
Without creating a gap or crisis. You know, a ship without a captain is a huge accident waiting to happen, and it does happen in companies.
Okay, you have made us to understand what succession planning is all about. I want to invite our viewers to be part of the show by probably asking questions or making comments on the show. And to ask questions and to make comments, please send only text message 23231287. Please no phone calls, only text message again to 08023231287. Is either you ask a question or you make a comment on the discussion on the relevance of succession planning in corporate governance. Now, how relevant is what we have said, succession planning, to the concept of corporate governance?
In my view, I think succession planning actually is at the very heart of corporate governance, and I'll tell you why. when we talk of corporate governance, we are talking about those principles, practices, and processes that enables an organization to function. Now, an organization, as you know, is inanimate. And let me put it this way. When we think of organization, we should not restrict our mind to companies. Yes, they are included. It's also consider not-for-profit organizations like NGOs. And I'll even invite viewers to also consider Nigeria as an entity. It needs people to run it. Governance is about how we run that enterprise in a sustainable manner, efficient and sustainable, to enable it achieve its purpose. Now we know that companies are inanimate. If you say Unilever, step forward. Of course, there is no Unilever. There are individuals making up Unilever. From the board to the MD, to the executive directors, to the entire stratum is made up of people. Good. So, as far as corporate governance is applicable to how the organization is run, leadership and how leadership is sustained, which affects people, is clearly a critical aspect of it. In fact, I would say that succession planning has not been given the criticality it deserves, and which is why you are seeing what is going on. I'm sure as the discussion goes on, we're going to look at the impact and the implication, whether for good or bad, if it is properly.
Okay, there is this popular saying that lack of succession planning jeopardizes the sustenance or the lifespan of a business.
Yes.
Can you justify this statement in the context of corporate governance?
Again, you look at it from this point of view. We know that individuals are the ones who work in organization. Succession planning is such that there is no, I think it was John Maxwell who says so, there is no success without a successor. It's not possible. Because let's assume the fellow started working at the age of 18, which is improbable. So let's use 20, graduated from school, started as a management trainee. And over the decades, he has gotten up to the role of managing director. But when he got there, he made sure he removed the ladder so that nobody else, anyone that seems to have that potential, he either gets them out or frustrates them. So the people will leave, so he remains there. Remember, he started about 20 years ago. When he leaves that organization, what happens? They don't find anybody. Then the entire structure will not only jeopardized, the truth is that the entire edifice will come down. Because you can only measure the success of a leader by the succession planning. If a leader delivers profit year on year, but is unable to grow a team that can sustain it, after he leaves, the organization will just get into a tailspin. And that is what is going on in a lot of corporate Nigeria. And not just corporate Nigeria, in Nigeria as a political entity. We really need to look into it because it's something that is very dear to my heart, that we need to address the issue of how we put in place a very sustainable succession planning. Very, very important.
Okay, you have talked about the fact that leaders, there is no successful leader without a successor.
Yes.
Now, that means that for leadership to be sustained,
yes,
there must be succession planning.
Yes.
The question now is, which categories of employees or categories of positions should be targeted as succession planning? Is it just for the leaders of the entire organization?
Wow, I think you have asked a very, very insightful question, because as somebody who have worked in different segments of the economy, I tend to see that this has been an issue. For example, in the banking sector, for example, financial sector, they tend to unduly focus on the guys who bring in the business, because they feel that they are the ones to, think about. They give them huge differential salaries, they give them perks, they give them a lot of bonuses, but the other categories of staff are seen as second tier, second rate. This is not correct. And I want to say to you that in determining how succession planning should be, the question is, what is the core business of this enterprise? For example, if your business is providing cleaning services, obviously the executive director sitting in his office is not as important as those employees that go to the customer to do the cleaning, because they are the ones the customer is seeing. I'll give you an example. In an organization I work, we had a young lady that was a receptionist. The organization happened to be a multinational. So when the expatriates come, the way this lady will welcome them, talk to them, tell them things. Do you know that when they call in, who do you think the first person they ask after? Not the MD. They will ask after that lady. It's the lady, because she was providing a very important service. And when, unfortunately, she was removed from that role, the replacement was unable, because there was no succession planning. So I will say this: number one, succession planning should be for the entire organization. Number two, there are some very critical roles that must be targeted to ensure that we have the right kind of people. I'm going to talk about the principle of ready now, ready soon, ready later, because those categories deals with how you deal with succession planning in a systematic manner.
Let's go a little bit into the Nigerian Code of Corporate Governance. The code provides that succession planning should be reviewed by organizations periodically, with the provision made for succession in emergency, if there is an emergency. Now, why do you think the code makes this particular provision?
Because clearly the writers of the code realizes that the last thing you want is a leaderless organization. But let me say it this way: I really think that succession planning ought to occupy a bigger space in corporate governance, because as the saying goes, it is the foundation of a building that determines how long it stands. The recent instances of collapsed building, to use that analogy, is a reflection of the fact that the foundation could not carry the building. So I believe that the writers of the code were looking at the fact that succession plan should not just be good to have. You write it, you put it in the archives. Their intention is that as you do periodic, quarterly, yearly review of your strategies and plan, succession planning should be part and parcel of it. Look at the world of today. You can say good morning to somebody today, and tomorrow he tells you, I'm talking to you from Canada.
Very possible.
I'm telling you, because they will not tell you what this generation will not tell you what they want to do. Only to find out. It happened to me recently. We had an employee, and I was greeting her, and she said, do you know where I am? I said, are you not in your house? I said, no, I'm in UK. So in situations like that, you are faced with, you can't even see the person to deal with in the first instance. So you have to quickly have emergency, which is why modern HR practitioners, and let me say on this platform, if there is a person that the board and management should take a lot of interest in, it is the person providing leadership for human resources. Because today, I want to say that they are becoming, if not as important as the MD, they're actually becoming more important. Because having a succession plan, effective one in place, is part of their remit. Of course, supported by the entire organization, but being able to replace people quickly and in a like for like, or even better for like, is now become a critical success factor, especially in those specialized areas where you don't just off the shelf, you find a replacement, because there are a lot of proprietary information, a lot of knowledge. So we should be looking at it to say, if something happens to our head of data processing, what are we going to do? For example.
Okay, we understand that for probably large or middle-sized organization.
Yes.
Should small-sized organization, or let me say, a one-man entrepreneurship, one-man business,
yes,
should also think about succession planning?
Well, look at it this way. The behemoth called Microsoft was one young man's idea in the garage. Toyota, the biggest car manufacturer in the world, was the idea of one man. Honda is named after one man who dreamt dreams. I'm not talking about Apple, it's still the vision of a man. We know that the what did they call the oak is in the acorn. You see the seed, you plant it, it takes time, but with sustainability, it becomes the oak. For small businesses, it's very important. The reason is this: there is what you call the corporate DNA. And a DNA is important when it is embedded at the conception of the business. When a man asks himself or a woman, why am I setting up this enterprise? If it's just for yourself, just for your fancy, just for a short time, for your lifetime after it is liquidated, like Gani Fawehimi did. He ran his law firm and demanded that upon his death, it should be liquidated. That's an example. But in most cases, I know people want...
In such case, you don't need succession
plan.
No,
you don't need succession plan. Okay. Because once the founder is off, then the business is liquidated. Or you have a specific project, build the Alausa Secretariat. You set up a special purpose vehicle. So his goal is build the secretariat. Once the job is done, the company dissolves. But if your plan is to contribute and leave something to society, then you should be asking yourself, how do I perpetuate this company? And before I wrap, just to mention that yesterday I was at an event. I was the chairman of a book launch. The striking aspect was that the founder died about in 2017, before the COVID and all the problem. Can you believe that? It took 4 years, but the children and the company, they wrote the book on his behalf. That company is still operating, is still doing well. And you know the secret? He brought the son, who was a medical doctor, and took him through the process of how the company runs over a period of time. When he died suddenly, without any preparation, the son just stepped in, and the business has continued since then. I saw it as a great example of what succession planning can do. And they employ thousands of people, just to think about it. So if that company has failed or just closed down, thousands of people will be jobless.
Okay, you have given us a very good example, which I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, please.
And your personal view on this.
Yes, please.
Will you say it's a good practice to strengthen succession planning, that one person should transfer the business to his child or to his children? Is it a good succession planning?
It depends. I've given you an example of where a man, it wasn't even his first son, it was his second son. He read medicine, for example. I mean, truthfully, he read medicine. But the business he was running is totally different. It's not medical at all. But in spite of his reading medicine, he still brought him, and over a period of time, took him through the rudiments and the nitty-gritties of the business. In fact, it has been found out that in some places, the founder will not allow the child or the children to work in the organization. Rather, he will send or she will send them to other organizations so that they can get a broader experience. But if the succession is just because the man died and his first son, who knows nothing about security, about cleaning services, about all those things, suddenly assumes responsibility, your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, for the purpose of the understanding of our viewers,
yes,
when you said it took him through the rudiments of the business,
yes,
I believe that should be training. Now, what is the relevance or the purpose of training in succession planning?
I mean, it's an area that we as Nigerians need to strengthen ourselves. A lot of people find or think that training is irrelevant, and which is one of the reasons why small startups all over the world are globalizing. Why our businesses are finding it difficult? Because we do not think that it is value for money to train people, especially people we are having hope that they will assume higher responsibility in the organization. Training is very critical, and I believe that for the knowledge of the audience, that's why you have an institute like ICSAN. This is one of its core responsibility, and I'm happy to say that since 1959, ICSAN has been establishing itself as the leading institute, professional institute for training on corporate governance, including succession planning.
Okay, let's talk about Nigeria and some businesses in Africa.
Yes, please.
Nigeria and some businesses in Africa, they don't last for too long as compared to some of the businesses or companies in the developed world.
Yes.
Do you think succession planning or failure of succession planning has a role to play in this?
I believe it has a role to play. It may not be the only factor, but I believe it's a key factor. You remember an individual who is deceased now, if I is the holder of the highest national award, even though he was awarded posthumously. He had his finger in almost every key sectors of the economy. You think about technology. Before technology became so important, you think about newspaper publishing, you think about bookshops, learning, you think about aviation industry, you think about agriculture, you think about the shipping industry. He was a behemoth sitting there. Then he died after some issues. You can't find those companies again. The question is, what happened? There may be other factors, but I think one major factor was that successors were not identified. Secondly, a lot of Nigerian companies, African companies, are unwilling to share the knowledge and the wealth. You know what I mean? If, for example, you have a successful financial institution, as long as it is limited, you are just there alone, but there's a limit. But immediately you go to the stock market, then you provide opportunities for others to become part of it. And what happens? There will be more scrutiny. Okay. There will be more examination. You will be accountable. You will not be holding the board meeting in your dining room. No, you call an AGM. Shareholders, other shareholders, investors will question you. And what does that do? It helps to improve the process. So until we learn that more is better, then people will just be holding on to their company. I don't want to lose control. I don't want to lose control. And the company dies.
I have a question here from somebody.
Yes, please.
This is from Mr. Tunde Adefenwa. He said, how can we avoid office politics in succession planning?
Thank you, Tunde, for that question. Let's be very clear that where two or three are gathered together, there will be politics. So it's a natural phenomenon, even among siblings. However, succession planning is good because a priori it sets the principles and the qualities required for an office. So what happens most times is that they say this is the successor. Let's try to make him fit for the job.
Okay.
And people in the office know this fellow cannot do it, but because he is X or Y. And what does that do? People begin to scheme and what have you. But if you have a transparent process that says these are the qualities to be a managing director. You must have done this, you must have been in sales, you must have been in marketing, you must have been in operation. People will not sit down in one place if they want to be empty. They will groom successors immediately to enable them transit to the next row, because they believe that they can do the top shot.
Okay, yeah. I want to be, I want to emphasize that.
Yes.
And I want you to offer suggestions for how companies can be proactive in their succession planning
process. Thank you very much. I think that as they plan for the year, okay, they should plan for succession. Let me be a bit personal. Where I worked, we have an annual process where the entire human resource of the company is reviewed on 2 levels. Level 1, so that everybody brings their input. So they said, these are the requirements to be at this particular level. So they look at each employee and said, is he ready now to assume the next role? Is he ready soon, or is he ready later? Now is immediate. Soon is up to like 12-18 months. Later is like 3 years.
You are looking at individuals.
As individual now, but you have already seen the structure of the organization where you think that it is important for it to be filled. Then you ask yourself, what do we need to do for this person now to bridge the gap, to enable him so that if his manager leaves, he'll be able to step in. The second one is, in some organizations, some people don't go on leave. That is anti-succession planning. Why? Because you now have opportunity to give to the people working under that person to do short-term engagement. And
they are afraid of not losing their position.
They are afraid of not losing, or there is something they are covering, or there is something they are gaining.
Okay, we don't have much time, but I would like to ask these two questions, and I want you to answer them in less than 30 seconds.
Okay.
ICSAN as an institute.
Yes.
Does ICSAN have a plan or succession planning training or workshop in their training calendar? And finally, what advice do you have for companies and organizations out there on how to go about succession planning?
Thank you. In 30 seconds, ICSAN has a training department. So it organizes periodic trainings that people, some of them are free, some you have to pay some token amount so you can join. They're always been advertised on their YouTube, on WhatsApp, or you can go to their website. Secondly, they can also do implant or explant bespoke training. So for organizations, so you can invite them. They have experts. They have seasoned experts, not theoretical experts, those who have gone through what they are talking about. Then they can tailor the training to meet the organizational needs. Now, for organizations, I want to say that succession planning, whether you are small or medium or big, is a very critical component of your sustainability plan. Because if you do not know who is going to step in the case of emergency, death, or any other circumstances so that the business can continue, that business is heading for the rocks.
Thank you very much, UCHE. As you have heard it, succession planning is a very critical role in sustainability plan. UCHE would like to thank you very much for coming on the show and for sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Tunde,
on corporate governance platform.
For the opportunity.
Our viewers out there, thank you very much for being part of the show. And to the production crew, thank you for doing a fantastic job. I will leave you with a quote from our veteran corporate governance guru and past president of ICSAN, Dr. Nosike Agokai, FCIS. And while reflecting on corporate governance, he said, companies have failed due to poor corporate governance regimes. I'd like us to take note of that. I'm Dr. Tunde Odeyemi. Bye for now.
Thank you, Tunde.
Do you have continuity or a succession plan for your business?
Has anyone shared the concept of sustainability with you?
What about the need to protect the rights of minority shareholders?
What are those ingredients germane to having effective meetings?
For these and many more, tune into Corporate Governance Platform every Thursday on MITV, your darling station, on DSTV 255 and UHF 43 at 4:30 p.m.
Corporate Governance Platform is your best medium for informative and educative strategies for the practice of the corporate governance profession.
Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria, ICSAN, the hub of governance professionals.